Hello, here's my co-host. This is Ellie. She's going to be very knowledgeable in helping facilitate the information that we're learning today. So, in order for us to help begin debunking how HetCis norms are impacting our society, we need to know how they're functioning in our own countries. And for guidance, it's also helpful to reference how they function and what's happening with them around the world. So let's take a look at a couple of resources, because the best way that we can know what's going on is obviously by listening to the news cycles. But also there are some websites and companies who on a regular basis are tracking the legislation that's occurring, what general attitudes by country tend to be. And there's also resources by country online that you can access. Today, I'll show an example of an America-specific resource, but then a majority, most of, and all of the other resources that we'll go over look at internationally what is happening. So I'll introduce you to these so you can use them as guidance in how to stay on top of the issues that are happening across our nation. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's get rid of this. All right, so let's start with Pew. So Pew Research Center is a nonpartisan research center, and I believe they're based out of the United States. However, they do cover not just United States topics. When I say they're nonpartisan, this means that they do not advocate in one direction or another, but they present attitudes and facts as objectively as possible, even though we know it's almost never possible to objectively present information. But they present information and want their reviewers and readers to make conclusions about them. So this is an example of their webpage. You can go access their general page at pewresearch.org. This is an example of some of the findings they have. It looks at the global divide on homosexuality and how it persists. You can read a complete report right here by downloading it. And you can see how there's a map across countries of what acceptance of, they're using the word homosexuality, even though that tends to be an outdated word, of what acceptance looks like. We also see how it changes. They do more of a longitudinal reflection. And they look at acceptance across the globe. So there's various data points, and I wanted to introduce you to this website as a place that you can learn about attitudes of how countries perceive acceptance of LGBT and homosexuality across the board. We'll refer to it as sexual minority individuals and community members. They also, okay, so here's more on LGBTQ acceptance. And here is information by Pew on gender equality and discrimination. So I'll include these resources on a handout that you can click into, and feel free to check out Pew on your own. And this is their About Pew webpage, so you can learn about, like, well, what's their mission? Where are they getting their information? Who are they? So that's Pew. Now let's look at Equaldex. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So what Equaldex does, this is a website, and let's see, as far as where they are based out of, I don't have the exact answer of where they're based out of, but these are reputable sources that have cited their work. And they do talk about in their About section who they are and what they do. And this is their contact information, so we can learn more about the work they do. And these are their partners. So what's interesting, what's worth noting, is that they're partnering with travelgay.com, which is a website that looks out for the well-being of the LGBTQ community in travel. So basically, which countries are safe to go to, which are not. And they're very blanketed statements, but they're useful information. So it's showing that this website tends to favor more the rights of LGBTQ individuals and is looking to protect their safety. So this is an interactive map. And so, for instance, let's click on Canada. So if we click on Canada, this pulls up what laws and attitudes are about the equality and rights of LGBT community members. So this looks at like what are the general sentiments of the country? Are there any censorship, conversion therapy bans? So this looks at all of that. And we can see what a detailed approach that Equaldex does when you go look at each country on this webpage. So they consolidate information and make a general interpretation of it. However, it is based on gathered data and reflection on laws. So this is helpful for looking at what are attitudes and laws across countries. And this again is who they partner with and more about them if you want to contact them to learn more about the quality of work that they do and what they do. All right, so now let's look at Amnesty. What I love about Amnesty International is they update regularly what laws are coming out or what news on LGBTQ rights are happening by country. And the most prominent news tends to be what's focused on at the bottom. So unfortunately, America just had a case come out where freedom of speech was supported by the Supreme Court, which means that people can reject serving like anybody that they're not in, like that they don't want to serve because of freedom of speech. I'm probably interpreting this wrong, so don't quote me on it 100%, but this means that essentially same-sex couples can be denied service essentially if it conflicts with the owner's freedom of speech. So like this was something that happens in my own home country, but then we also see what the local news is, especially with Pride Month, on what kind of rights are being passed and what specific laws are going on. So that's Amnesty International. This is a heavily focused website on LGBTQ or I rights. And what's important to note about that is when websites are advocating for, it's subjective, however, based on objective information that's informing it. So you'll find a lot of news stories are what inform Amnesty. And this is more of about Amnesty. So you can learn what is their structure, strategic plan, who funds them, who finances them. So that way we can be informed consumers of the information that we are choosing to, state claims on. All right, so right here, this is a report. It's the LGBT plus Pride 2021 Global Survey, and it's by Ipsos, which I believe is out of France. But it's also an international gathering of data that reflects on attitudes, wellness, and climate of gender identity and sexual orientation attitudes, and presence of people by country with these identity. So this is helpful to review. And you can go online. I'll include the website to this as well on a handout. But you can see like general information of prevalence, of attitudes, attitudes by generation, and it's just helpful information to see by countries. All right. So now we're looking at our world in data. And this is a website that reflects on LGBT plus rights. And there's interactive maps that you can look at that talk about different factors. So we have marriage for same-sex partners, joint adoption policies, like the legalness of public outness with gender identities, even though ideally, rights would be secured across the board. This is such a helpful interactive website. It also goes across timelines. Currently, it's slightly outdated, where 2019 was its last update. But this is so important and helpful because you can click around into your country on various topics or other countries. Here, like let's take Brazil, for instance. And we can see right here that when we click on Brazil, it follows how joint adoptions are favored in law from 1991 to 2019, where now it's legal and condoned versus up to about, let's see. Well, let's go back to 2019. But we see that like closer in the 20 teens, it was at some point when it became legal. So this is a great way to keep, on board and aware of what our policies across different countries. So we've got, here's our Europe area. All right. Anyway, so this is a helpful website to just reflect on a quick snapshot of how our laws with various topics across the world. Lastly, this is a country-specific resource. This is the MAP project, Movement Advancement Project. This is specific to the United States. I'll show you briefly some of the content that they have. And I'm sharing this country-specific resource because I encourage all of us to go look at what resources are available specific to our countries that we have. And it's also helpful to learn what resources are available in other countries that we can aim to replicate or make available in our countries. So the MAP, Movement Advancement Project, it is I believe it's a nonprofit, and it's composed of legal minds, of academic minds, and they are gathering data specifically related to laws by state and overall country to learn what are the attitudes. So for instance, LGBT equality, overall policy, tally. This gives a summary. Let me go back there. So this gives a general, how is the quality of wellness for LGBT community members by state? And basically looking at the tally, where there's more negative, you're going to see more red. In America, we tend to see that southeastern states tend to be more of that red color. The coasts tend to be more of that high protective policy. And we see a little bit of that moderateness in the middle of the country. So then you click on let's look at Michigan. That's where I'm filming right now. So fun. So what we see is a percentage of adults who are LGBTQ in this state, total population, percentage of workforce, number of workers, percentage of adults raising children. And we see about the policy. So this is just a general snapshot with more specific details. But then we go into details on what laws exist within this particular state related to marriage for same-sex couples, medical decision-making, step-parent adoptions, and joint adoptions, both by same-sex couples. So we see more adoption laws, discrimination laws, recognition for parents using assisted reproduction, let's see, and inclusive laws for partners and children. And then we also get into non-discrimination laws, religious exemption laws, and LGBTQ youth laws and policies. So this is specific to LGBT youth in schools, minors, and families, how we can help kiddos with sexual minority identities and diverse gender identities. All right. And then lastly, healthcare laws, or not lastly, we have quite a few. So there's healthcare laws that look specifically into what treatment rights do LGBTQ community members have, types of laws that focus on justice, which Michigan is not doing strong with. Ability for transgender people to correct their name and gender marker on identity documents. And this looks at the total tally. And that's pretty much about it. I will say Michigan just did a great job of banning conversion therapy. So now the whole state is green, but this just happened recently. So we won't see that for maybe a month or so when they update the website. So this is an example of what the MAP website includes, and there's so much information that you can gather by specific states in the United States. So I hope these resources were helpful. Ellie hopes that you really enjoyed our presentation. And thank you so much for taking the time to learn how we can all be advocates in debunking HetCisNorms and the impact they have in our communities for our kiddos and our colleagues. All right. Have a good one. Thank you.